Welcome back to the continuation of Practical Shamanism, and this part is called Odds and Sods, which is fun for me to say, and maybe you'll enjoy it too. This particular session is dedicated to some of the objects and some of the friends that I like to include on my altar, or I like to include in my circle, or if I'm doing my own ceremony or my own ritual, I like to include it there as well. Pardon me. That's what you get for working with cats. What I'd like to do before we begin anything is just light a smudge and say a short prayer of gratitude. And then I'll move my candle out of the way so that I don't burn my own self and some of my friends along with it. So I just have, this is a smudge that I've made, and we are going to talk about smudge, but not in this particular part of it. So I like to use the wooden matches, as I've said before, and I'll probably say it till you're tired of hearing about it. And a smudge is just a nice start of a clearing so that we may all join in this time, in this space, as freely as we can and as clearly and concisely, so that whatever messages I share or bring about will have impact in what we're doing. I say prayers to the north, the south, the east, the west, for all I see and for all I cannot. I thank you for coming to this time, this place, and this space. Thank you to the teachers who have come before me, and prayers to the teachers who will come after me. Prayers to the ancestors who guide my path, who fill my heart, make my mind incredibly more curious, and to all of the beings which are here on this table with me and who wish to share part of their story from my house to your home, to your car, to wherever you're listening to this particular episode of Practical Shamanism. Well, let's get started. So, as you know, the first thing I lit is smudge. Smudge, again, is an important part. Now, I wanted to talk about some of the different ways to create altars in a way of how you're going to move through the energy of a ceremony or ritual, depending on what you're doing. So one of the very first things that I like to utilize or bring into my ceremony are the center stones for the medicine wheel. So the center stones for the medicine wheel are important in the parts of who we are. What is the center of the medicine wheel, and why is it important to me when in my odds and sods? Well, I'm going to share with you the reason that it's important in my odds and sods. The reason that it is this is the opportunity to bring together different stones, different crystals, different creators, in order to bring about order from the chaos. I also like to keep little containers because that's how my jam goes. So, how do we begin with this? I always begin, first before I begin anything, I always light a candle, and that is where I build everything around. That's where I light my other candles from. So the beginning of anything in the odds and sods of my reality is to light a candle, and not only just because I am a fire sign, but because it is an element that brings me back home to myself. And it was a very important lesson in my journey work to always have a candle in the room when I'm journeying, even when I'm by myself, or if there are other people. It is the light from my perspective, my teachings, it is the light that will always get me back into the room, that will always bring me back into this place, this space. So to cross the threshold from the sacred to the mundane. So the candle lit for me is an honoring for brothers, Brother Fire in the south, Shamanism, but it is also an offering to the light that is not only the light of my own self, the light of the divine, whatever the divine is for you, the light of the creator, the beginning of all things, the fire, la la la, all of the things that you would like to add. So that's where I start everything. From there, I do like to light my smudge, and I will do, because I'm a 3-person, right, I will do 3 rounds around the area before I pull out anything that I'm going to create my work from. So I will take the smudge in the first round of walking in, and I usually go counterclockwise, just as a way of pushing out or banishing out of my space. And the first round is for me, because I know there's only probably 1, maybe 2 of you watching this that are like me and might have a monkey mind. Now I know the rest of you are super awesome, and you're just going to have to pay attention, or while I chat to the 1 or 2 of us who have monkey mind. The reason that I go around first is to get all of my own thoughts out. So I will be using my feather fan or whatever I'm using at that particular time, and I will focus on just letting my own thoughts go and not criticizing myself for having thoughts, and not criticizing myself for having to take this extra step in order to get out of my own way and get into the sacred space. The second round is the round for the spirits in the room. So it's that round of, okay, now I'm starting to get this connection with the room. Now I'm getting the connection with the spirits. And then the last round is the round of welcoming in all of the spirits. So I would generally say my prayers to the directions in the second one, but definitely in the third round away. Now this is when I'm pulling in spirit. This is when I've trained myself that this is the center of it. This is where I begin. I've ejected as much of my ego or the outside critic as much as I can for this particular place and time. So the very first thing that I do is I generally like to create the center, especially if I've been teaching the medicine wheel or my students are really familiar with the medicine wheel. And if that's where I need to be in that sacred space, in the odds and sods of what I'm doing. So the first stone that I put down, I've chosen a large quartz for the creator stone. I don't think you have to have anything particularly grand or amazing, but these are the stones that I have chosen, are the stones that are put apart or asked for or indicated in Sun Bear's work for the medicine wheel. So the very first one I put down is my creator stone. And then for the second one is Mother Earth. So for that one I have my green clay. And it's supposed to be green, or it's supposed to be clay. So this is a lovely green stone that I bought secondhand. I can't even really tell you what it is. It may be an agate, but there may be someone out there who knows a lot more than me. I know that for certain. So that is that's the next stone for me. That's the Mother Earth stone. And the second stone is Father Sun, and this is a geode. You can also use citrine. I used citrine for a number of years, but the geode I think is in representation to, or what it could represent is that unknowingness, that mystery. So we know a lot about the sun, the gaseous aspects of the sun. But the geode is that place of cracking open. It's that place of coming to illumination, to center, to self. And the Father Sun and the Mother Earth, they're very obviously very important stones and very important aspects. We have the earth, but if we don't have the sun and the clouds and the weather that supports us, then we don't necessarily have something that could be we need to have both aspects of both. I'm just going off on a tangent. And the next one that we have is Grandmother Moon. Now, I use a moonstone. I am very fortunate to have this beautiful moonstone in the shape of a heart. and that is Grandmother Moon for me, so I place it there. And I also have a small silver heart that I put there because the moon to me is also silver. And I know that in the last time we got together and I spoke about the stones that I use for the moons are the dark river stones, and so things don't have to be perfect in every way. So that's what I like to have, the representation of both the moonstone and silver, because they do correspond for me with relationship to the moon. So the next part that you put down is the earthstone, and this is the petrified wood, and this is a raw piece of petrified wood that was found in a different part of the city that a friend found and passed on to me from Gold Bar in another area. So the next part is the where am I here? The next part is the river stone, which is the water, and water is a very important stone. It's a very important element. So we have earth, and then we have that. We have the pumice stone, which represents fire, which is the thunderbird, and that is that place of coming together, is that place of rising. It's, of course, we're taking in the four elements. And then the last is azurite. Azurite is for air and is for butterfly. So this gives us that relationship to air. So now in the center of my circle, I have brought in the creator stone, so the chaos. And there is a lot that we have dedicated our lives to that has started off in chaos. Most ideas start in chaos. We start off as chaos, as a sperm and an egg coming together from this mystery pool of fluids. And then the next we have the Mother Earth, which is, we have to honor that the earth and Mother Earth and the element of earth are two very different things in the medicine wheel. The Mother Earth represents that full encasement that encapsulates all of the aspects of the earth, whether it's all of the elements as well as the air, and the relationship between earth and Father Sun. And Father Sun comes second because it is the most brilliant of the lights in the sky that we have, even though we know it's a star to somebody else. This is what gives us the lifeblood for the planet that we live on. And then we place honor in Grandmother Moon, and Grandmother Moon is that representation or that accumulation of the Creator, and then the Creator first creates the Mother, and then the Father, and then the Grandmother Moon in that, and representing that the ancestors have a very strong place, and the ancestors came before the beginning of the Father Sun and Mother Moon, that there were spirits first that were lingering about. That's how I interpret it. And then the petrified wood, so we have the elements of earth and water and fire and air, and in this we have the turtle, we have the frog, we have the phoenix, we have the butterfly, and these are good starting parts for me in my odds and sods for when I start to put together an altar or ceremony. I like to pay homage to, like I said, to the chaos, to all of the elements that are represented in the medicine wheel, and pay honor to the things that we see and that we cannot see. So that's an important part of where I start in my odds and sods. And how you're going to do it is entirely up to you. But these are things that aren't important for me. These are spirits that have called to me. These are lessons and teachings that are important to me. So I am appreciative of the different ways that you can gather the stones and all of the different meanings for your own self. So that's one of my favorite odds and sods. The other part that is an important aspect of the ceremony is, what do we place for all of the different elements? Do you wish to put candles in just the four directions? Do you wish to put different encasements or different representations? So for water, for me, sometimes I use a bowl of water. Sometimes I use spirits that are associated with water. and with west. So I have a candle holder that is a fairy, and that is a representation for me for west. With south, with it being fire, there is a candle in the fire, but I could also use red for that. I could also bring in, Shaudanis is the coyote, and it is the spirit that's associated with south. So I could bring in a coyote. I could bring in a figurine of coyote. I could bring in a very special container for all of the different candles that I would use. That's one of the aspects of honoring fire for me. And how do we bring in east? We bring in east. I use, the candle. I also use a little lantern that I have, which is a frog, and it is one of the oldest pieces of. I don't have a lot from my childhood. I moved around a lot as a young woman, and I didn't have a lot of sentimental attachment to things, but this little lantern came back, and it was a gift to me when I was 12 or 13, so I put it in the east to remind me of my beginnings. I put it in the east to remind me of my childhood. In the north, we talked about the sacred soil, so I might have a bowl of soil, depending on the work we're doing. I might have another cradle of stones. I'll often have bones in the north too, because it is that representation of death. So there are many different ways of bringing sacred into your circle. There are many different layers to the different odds and sods. There are different ways of representing your relationship to one element or the other, to one aspect of the element or another. So there are lots of different ways of doing things and lots of different layers. And it's the layers that I like to pay attention to. Is my work going to be very light and very surface, or is the work going to be very deep and very layered? So therefore, do I have a large number of pieces of paraphernalia there with me in order to start the process or the journey? Is it going to be deep? So do I have lots? Is it going to be very, very simple because it's a simple ceremony? Some of the other parts that are important for me is tobacco. Tobacco comes in lots of different forms. We have the herbal cigarettes, which are lit in representation of fire. We have cigars that are brought and given as gifts to me, and we have the different cigarettes that are brought from different parts of the world and wrapped in their own beautiful part. This one came from Peru, and there are bundles. This is a small bundle of tobacco that was gifted to me, and this is loose tobacco. So I keep my tobacco in its own very container, and so if I need tobacco as as an honoring spirit, or as one of the aspects of the four directions, because there are the four smudges. There's cedar, sage, tobacco, and sweetgrass. That can be also put on the altar where it is represented. Tobacco is an honoring of the treaty land, Treaty 6 that I work on, that they have a relationship to. Tobacco has had a relationship to this land as a place of offering, as a symbol of offering. So when I journeyed to the spirits of this land very long time ago, it was one of the requests that I have in my possession, and it has been something that has been given to me over and over and over. So it has been replenished many times over, which gives me the idea that spirits of others are honoring my request and what the spirits have requested of me, to have a continuous flow of tobacco as an offering. So I have a great deal of respect for tobacco. I did show you last time we met, or was the tobacco ties that I use on my porta altar. And this sits in my healing room. If there is a call for tobacco in my smudge, then I will place the loose tobacco on there. If it is called for in the healing ceremony for the people that I'm working with, either as a breathe it in and blow it out, or as a means of moving something through the body, then I will be, if I'm asked, I will do that. I do not have a relationship with tobacco as a medicine, so it isn't something that I bring into my body to use on another person's body very often, because it's not my medicine. It's not something that I've been trained to do. It's not permission that I've been granted to have a long-term understudy for the spirit of tobacco. So even though it is also a representation for Treaty 6 land, there is a very long-standing history of tobacco in ceremony, in healings, in extractions, in honoring of spirits, and blessing ayahuasca. There is a long history of tobacco and humans, depending on where geographically you're located and what that medicine means. So there is that heaviness of the medicine. I don't mean heaviness as something that is a burden or something that is wrong, but heaviness as this is something so sacred, you cannot put it down. So whether it is in Treaty 6 land because that's where I live, or because it is in honoring of the spirits who've asked me to use it, or if it is also an honoring for the spirits that I've briefly worked with when I've traveled abroad to work with shamans from other countries, and been given just a little bit of permission to use their medicines in my own ceremony. But I wouldn't claim it as my own, but rather permission for it. And this, as I said, this sits in my healing room. I just have a bookcase that I keep different paraphernalia on in case I need it at any particular point in time. The agua de Florida, or Florida water, many people that I've spoken to also have a use for Florida water. They've been able to purchase it in different bookstores can carry it. I know there it is online. This is a good alternative for people who cannot have any type of smoke in their dwelling or leave a scent or lingering scent in a public building, and the only thing that you need to ask is if somebody has a allergy to a strong scent. So the way that I was taught to use it was to shake a little bit out in your hand, not very much because it has quite a scent to it. And then we rub it together and clap 3 times. Bring it to your face. Not too close to your face because it's really strong. And then down and wash your body with the agua de Florida, the Florida water. And that is another way of cleansing yourself, cleansing the building. I know that some people bring it in their mouth and spit it out. I never been called to do that. I'm very grateful for that. The Florida water comes in small bottles and large bottles, and as I said, it is available in other places. It does have a lingering scent. It is men's aftershave after all, and I don't know how it became incorporated in ceremony, but when I traveled to Peru and when I've done subsequent ceremonies in my own country with ambassadors from Peru and other places in Central America, the agua de Florida was used and was honored and venerated, but I don't know exactly how it became a part of ceremony. So that is a great alternative. It's also a very good way of waking up your senses. Like the 3 loud claps are that part of that I'm waking up to spirit. I'm involving myself with spirit. I'm physically moving my own body in relationship to the sacredness or that sacred water, that scent, that medicine is on my hands, and I clap 3 times. And you know, one of the elements of it that was taught was that sense of joy with it. Hi-ya-ya! So that absolute happiness of we are here, we are present, we are engaged with spirit. We do so willingly, and we do so with an open heart. So there's that part of it, and I do like the moving over of the body. And I have to warn you that it is very strong scent, and some people may have an allergic reaction to that. So use wisely at your own idea. I like to use a large stone in my way of clearing other stones. So today, when I am in front of the camera and I am filming this for you, it is a new moon. And in that, what I have is I need to put out my new moon water this evening so that it becomes fresher in the new moon. And I also have stones that I have used in soul retrieval work from the full moon to the new moon. So those stones I will also put out under the new moon, and they become cleansed. And so whatever little bits and pieces of the soul pieces I brought back that could be debris or dust that didn't need to go back in the body are lingering in these stones. I could put them on top of this stone to clear them, but the instructions I've been given is to put them outside. So why am I talking about the stone, you might ask? Very good question. Sometimes we are compelled to bring stones in from either you've purchased them, you've found them on the ground, whatever the case may be. And I like to acclimate a stone to my room, to my healing room, to the sacred objects that I have living together in a small space. And if it's a new stone, if it's a new object of sacredness and paraphernalia, then I put it on this stone. This stone is apophyllite, and I find it to be a very intense stone, very good for clearing, for cleaning, for ensuring that what is added to my room is going to be at a similar vibration. Whatever is stuck on it is going to be removed. So I like to use a clearing stone along with the things that I have. And then these stones will go out in the night under the new moon. I have a collection of stones that I use. This one I wouldn't use for doing a soul retrieval because it might break off in my mouth. But there are lots of different types of stones that I use, and these generally go out in the new moon and the full moon as well. Not all the time, because they haven't been used. They're sitting just above on another shelf up above the cleaning stone, the apophyllite. So they are constantly being cleansed and renewed in the energy, but sometimes it just doesn't hurt to put your stones out underneath the new moon or the full moon or the 7 days prior to an equinox or a solstice to get that good energy going. I know I talked about the waiting room or the soul collector, or this is the stone that I would use as a soul catcher. So if I am in my odds and sods work, I know I talked about it last time, so why I'm bringing it up now is because this is the night that this would go outside. This is the night that this would be cleansed of whatever is in the waiting room. Can it be done on the full moon? Absolutely. But my preference is to work with the new moon. I find the new moon has more potency, but that's because, for me, and I think one of the reasons, just as a very brief side note, brief tangent, is that when I did look at when I was born under a new moon, and the skies would have been very dark. So I believe that is one of the reasons why I'm more drawn to the new moon to work with and find it more potent and more powerful than I do with the full moon. So these will be going outside this evening along with the bottle of water that I use for my new moon water. I like to use bracelets. One of the lessons I have had over the years is that when I do healing work, is the different energy, it sometimes has the ability to bite or to make me itchy. Now, this might not ring or have any resonance of truth for you. I recognize we all work very differently. So, what happens for me is if I wear a stone bracelet on my wrist when I work, then whatever my hands are digging into on the physical body that I'm working with only goes to the stones and stops, so that I don't get bit here, I don't get itchy. If I do get itchy, then I take whatever it is, a cloth, and that's how I get to this, how I itch myself. What I was taught from my spirits is that when I use my fingers and I scratch during healing, that creates a micro tear or a micro abrasion in my energy field that could attach or allow an attachment of the energy or the goop that I'm pulling out of and off someone's body. So I'm not supposed to use my own fingernails. I'm supposed to use cloth or something in order to get the itch off. The itch for me, especially if I'm in very intense work, there will be parts of me that get itchy. I recognize part of that could be psychological because I need to focus, but my mind doesn't want to focus, so my body might create an itch. I don't know. What I do know is that I do follow the words of my spirits. I don't scratch myself, and when I'm not in the healing room, I get far less itchy than any other time. And it is only because I did it over time and was able to put 2 and 2 together with another 2 and 2 with another 2 and 2 that I came up with the ways of speaking to spirit, asking them how do I keep myself safe, and then through trial and error finding ways of helping me to stay cleaner and safer when I've got my hands in the goop of somebody's roots and trauma and whatever the body is releasing, whatever the body is letting go of. So I like these. Now, I also like to work with protection. What do I mean by that? When I am setting up my space, I have to be cognizant of what I'm setting my space up for and what am I inviting the spirits in for. There are times when we are going to work shamanically with spirits that may be not quite the same level of awesomeness that you are, or they may have a hidden agenda, or you may need protection. What I like to do is I like to have tools, paraphernalia around me that is specifically designed for that. So I have a blade which has been gifted to me as a sign for not crossing, or how do I keep myself safe in that regard. Knives are important for me in the spirit world. When I work shamanically, I have a number of knives, so knives are going to follow me into this world. I know that for witches and or some Wicca practitioners and other practitioners, they use an athame or a sacred sword. I don't know a lot about the ceremony, so if you're a witch, perhaps you can share with me, or I know I have witch friends, so I could easily ask too. But how you use your sacred object and how I use my sacred object could be very different. I don't work with the knives because it comes from the Finnish tradition, because I haven't found a lot of references to that, and the individuals that I've talked to don't talk a lot about ceremonial knives or ceremonial objects that are protection in that way. So this is one of the things that I would use in ceremony to help keep me safe, so to speak. The other knife that I like to use is a knife for healing work. Why do I need a knife in healing work? Why would I use any type of knife for healing work? Well, I think that knives are very essential in the odds and sods way of doing work, because we often have things that may be attached to us. So I might use the knife as a way of clearing the skin or clearing the body. Keep in mind that I have a very, very sharp tip on the end of this one, and this blade, although not sharp, is not dull either. For me, it also has the element of fire, so when I use a blade in my healing work, it is that cutting through, it is that fire, it is that cauterization, it is that ability to slice through the illusions of the body, the illusions of self, and get underneath to the truth of what things are, to get underneath to pull out the actual seed and not the bypass seeds. Or we have this issue all relates to, as an example, all relates to safety. So if I'm vulnerable in safety, I'm going to erect different places in my body and my psyche that are safety or sentinel or warriors in order to keep this vulnerable part of myself alive and well. So in order to cut through the illusion of having to keep sentinels into the safety, I would help to cut through that, dig into the wounding, the original wounding, which created the philosophy, the idea that I'm not safe, so that I would pull out. So that is one of the ways that the knife is very sacred. I keep my knife in a very secluded place. I have a medicine pouch with medicine in it. So there's sweetgrass, there's red willow fungus or diamond willow fungus. There are other little odds and sods that I have in there which are also very sacred. So I have it in a medicine pouch. I have it closed up and put away in a dark space. The reason for that is because I think this power, the more that I use it, the longer I've had it, the more power it has, the more energy it has. And I like to keep it away from temptations of, the cats want to play with it, or if it's on my healing altar. I just think that things that have a use for cutting through illusions or a use for deeper magic or deeper medicine should be treated respectfully and placed in a dark place in order to keep that energy continually going around in it. And again, I think that's part of the new moon. If it was yours and you use something like this, you might want to keep it out in the light. You might want to keep it on your altar at all times so that it is continually generating cleanliness. I don't know. I've also kept it in the same in the same bag that it came with all those many, many years ago. Now, when I talk about journeying and I talk about the different ways that you can journey, so whether with the rattle or the drums, I've never really talked about the different types of bandanas that you can use. So when I ask for bandanas, I've had to learn to use the word cloths because not everybody knows what a bandana is. So you can get a simple cloth bandana from your local dollar store, or maybe you have some already, and then fold it in half and run it up a few times and put it around your eyes and tie it at the back of the head. This has been used by me for, not this exact one, but I've used many blindfolds over the years, many bandanas, and I really like that part of it. I've explained it before, how it shuts down the visual cortex, which relaxes it and helps the central nervous system to move and make you more comfortable and less likely to have that urge to open your eyes and destroy that balance that you found if you have something covering your eyes. So this is one example of a bandana. Another example is these are called Minefolds. That's the name of the company. There may be other companies that have it. But it's completely black. You can't see through it. It has a sponge and it has cutouts for your eyes. Now, my teacher way back in the very, very beginning said that there are shamans who journey with their eyes open. So this has been gifted to me, and I do use it in certain times, but it has, for me, I have a small face, and it's quite large, so I find that I find it a bit disruptive. But If it's really, really bright out, this is something that I use. Or if there are lots of lights and I really need to shut into the darkness and focus and move into the spirit world, this has become a very, very important tool and a good helper. My favorite above all of them is the beanbag. And the beanbag for an eye cover has a lovely pressure, and I find it comforting. I find it very I find it great. I find it my favorite way if I'm just in my own space doing some journey work for myself. I also give them to the patients that I have, and when I get them to do some journey work, is I have a few of these and I place them on their eyes. So whatever is going to make them comfortable. And these are different types of ways of blocking out the sun, blocking out the light, and allowing that visual cortex to actually shut down for those 7, 8, 15, 20, however many minutes that you're going to journey. So these are different alternatives to how we do it, how we're going to make it different, how we're going to get in the spirit world in and out. Now, one of the other things that I like to use is when we talk about the protection, and I talked about the knives. This is another collection of objects, and I use this as also protection in my altars. I also use it continually in my healing room. These are African, I'm not sure where in Africa, African porcupine quills. So they're substantially longer than the horrible little tiny quills that we have here. It's in a pouch, and inside it are objects that I won't break out because these are sacred to me, and they're sacred medicine. So just like I would keep this knife in the dark, I'm not going to open up the contents because they're sacred contents, and they're meaningful to me. And I have created this pouch as a way of confusing spirits that come in. So they're caught in here, and then they are caught and kept held in whatever I have left in the bottom of this bottom of this bag. And the way that I clear and I clean this is to put it into the windowsill, on the windowsill. And the only time I really like to clean these is on the darkest of nights, so either on a new moon or during the time of winter solstice, and the darkness that follows the 3 days before and the 3 days after, because it is intended specifically to keep away the energy attacks or the attacks from spirit that are not always very kind, that leave greeblies and globules on your body. I like to have something that fools them or they're lured into and trapped into. I know in other traditions use a glass jar and will tie knots into threads or yarn so that keeps something clear, and it keeps them wound up, caught into it, and they're put in windows to keep the energy coming from the house, to keep it clean and keep it clear. So that's another thing. So I like the objects of war. I like the objects that aren't very friendly looking, that are made specifically for safety, are made specifically for taking care of that part of spirit that isn't always sunshine, wishes, and candy cane kisses, because it certainly isn't. So that's an important, or one of the elements of the odds and sods I like. I also will use different types of feather fans. I know I've talked about the feather fans before, but when I am invited over to do a house clearing, I use this handy dandy little broom. And thanks to my friend Jane, who won it at a silent auction and thought I could use it, when I received it, I knew exactly what it would be for. And it is great for getting the cobwebs, for smacking on the wall to wake the house up, or to get the spirits in the house that think that they can hide from me, or the energy in the house that thinks it can hide from me, to wake it up and to give it a good idea that I'm here and that I'm going to move with you, and I'm going to move the energy out of the room. This is a feather fan that I made from the tail feathers of an owl, and this is again in red. I talked about having red as the barrier between the negative energy or the attachments or the intrusions on the body. So I use red as a barrier between me, much like the bracelets are a barrier. And this particular feather fan I use for big work. So if I have a big room that I'm using and I know that we're going to deal with very heavy work, if we're dealing with ancestral trauma, if we're dealing with trauma of childhood, if we're dealing with the loss of the child, whatever we're working with, if it's big energy and I'm going to need to really clear the space, then I use this beautiful feather fan. And it has so much power behind it, not only because it's concave and it can grab the air, but because it is a beautiful messenger. The owl is one of the most beautiful messengers between this world and the next world. And I do know that some people have different ideas of owls, and they have different superstitions, different beliefs, and I honor those. And if the owl is not a particular bird that you could use or you find safe from your cultural understanding, from your myths, from your stories, then by all means find another tool that will be potent and powerful for you to use in your odds and sods, right? The other part of protection and keeping myself safe are, what do I wear? I know we've talked a bit about amulets and amulets being an important part of the work, but there have to be items, from my perspective, that are used as protection. So I have one that nobody ever sees, and it goes into my bra and rides on my body, and it is a fetish that is designed specifically for protection and has been carved specifically for that purpose, specifically for a relationship to the other side, to psychopomp work. So it's an important element for me, and it's an important friend to have. And then there's my great friend Bear. I've worked with Bear for a lot of years, and this was gifted to me by a very good friend of mine who had it created by an artist that she knew. And I use this and put this under my shirt, and it is my continual protection of my heart and my physical body. If anything is going to protect me, a lovely bear is going to do so. And these are, and they very much look like prayer beads that you would find in the Catholic Church, so rosary, but these are goddess beads, and there are 3 different types of beads. And then this is a brown bear's claw there, and it is used as that centerpiece, or that big crystal that most people would have. This means far more to me, and again was a gift, and this was made specifically for me. And I wear this very often. I wear both of these. So this one I'll wear under my shirt, and this one I'll wear over my shirt. I have to be careful because there is the claw, and I've never hurt people, but it does catch onto things. So if you're making something and you're using claws, or you're using large pokey objects, remember that you can always use a little piece of wax on the end, and you can form it so that it's nice and tight. You can also use silicone in order to protect yourself and the end of the claw, or the end of the bird's claw if you're using those too, the talons. So personal protection and personal fetishes, personal jewelry are very important for me. They're very important for me to stay safe. They're important for me, for my body and my presence to stay safe. And my tattoos are also designed with that in mind, to keep me safe and to watch my 6, because there's nobody behind me except for myself. So my tattoos are very important for keeping me safe and for watching my back and keeping my back safe. These are important tools for me. Another important tools are the little tiny things. So I have been very fortunate to rescue furs and animal pieces and bones from a person who does taxidermy. So there will be hunters who will trap something, kill something, and take it to the taxidermist to either have it cleaned or skinned. And so what I do, and I don't do it anymore because I have more than I'll ever use, but I have talked to my local taxidermist to find out if there are anything that I could purchase in order to take it out of the mundane and give it sacred life. If its life has already been taken, then if I can in some way find a place or a way to honor the spirit of the animal and to honor the sacredness of the sacrifice of their life, I will do that. So for me, I have a fox, and you can see why it was rejected, because in the process of clearing it or the process of working with it, the tail became undone. So it wasn't a saleable or as saleable. And it is a beautiful red fox, and it has been on my altar many times. I will place it in south because south is for me the color of fire and the color of red, and this is a red fox, and fox are very important to me. So I use this as a reminder not only of the energy of the fox, so the cunningness, the intelligence, the south, so that ability to be playful as well as a fierce fighter and a predator. So that is all aspects of the fox. I have another fox that is white, that it was used for its tail and the rest of the fur was discarded. So I do have that one as well. And I will lay them together in honor in the altar to bring honor to the north as well as to the south, to the spirits of the north, to the spirits of the south. So I do have sacred place for the fox in my circles and in my teachings and in my workshops. And I've also rescued. We have a place here that is called Helford High that is dedicated to providing objects for trapping, for hunting, and so on and so forth. And they have scraps of fur because they, for whatever reason, I don't know. And I have gone on a number of occasions, especially 20, 25 years ago when I first discovered it, in order to gather pieces of my spirit friends to come with me to every ceremony so that people can actually see what they look like. And out of that, I was able to get an entire right paw, or no, this is the left paw of a black bear, and you can see that the claws are around the same size or a very similar size to the sacred object or the necklace that I have here. And I can put this on and put my fingers in it, and I've used it for ceremonies of waking the bear. If I have people in the trance posture of grandmother bear or grandfather bear, I absolutely make sure that the bear paw is there with me. And this had been just discarded in a refuse pile of $1 a pound fur, as was this. And this is an otter tail, and very soft, very beautiful. And I bring it to remind me of the playfulness of water. And I place this on my altar as a reminder of the otter spirit that helps me in the spirit world when I need to do medicine and healing in that realm. The otter will take me into the water, into the lakes or into the rivers to find aquatic plants that are going to be useful as medicine if I encounter something or someone in the spirit world that might need healing and healing attention. Now, I have the utmost respect for those of you watching who in no uncertain terms would ever use anything from a living animal in your ceremony, whether it be a feather fan or whether it be pieces of animal. I respect that fully, and in that case, there are many ways of bringing animals into your altar space. This is a cute, I just absolutely love this little piece, and I have an affinity for frogs. So this is a little frog that I have used over time, and it represents West. It is another way of including an animal spirit into the work that I do. And I have a carved owl that I use as a way of bringing spirits into the room or into the sacred space. And I even use plastic. So I have the plastic snake that I have used over time. And I also have snake skin, surprise, surprise, that people have gifted me with in order to bring that into my ceremony. And also with the snake skin, I'll talk about this again, but I use some snake skin in my smudges if I want to bring in that energy or that aspect of snake into what I'm working with. So these are some of the Onai cannot. This is for bear if the bear skin is not available to you, if it's something that you absolutely wouldn't ever touch. I found this little jar of honey, and it is in the shape of the bear, and I bought it at some discount store, and it's glass, so I would use that on my altar for the representation of the north, or for Mudjikiwis for west. I would use this little guy here, and I would use owl as either the north, or also for the east I would use the frog as a representation and as a spirit for the west, because it sits above all of the grounds. I could use it in the east because it's in the spring that we hear the most frogs. I could use it in the south because in warm climates there are different types of frogs. There are many different types of frogs that are beautiful, multicolored. And I could also place it in the north because it is an old spirit. It is a spirit that has been talked about in old myths and old stories of the magic of the frog and so on and so forth. And we've used the frog in many ways in our ceremonies. So these are just some ideas of how to also bring animals into your work. And every once in a while you may be fortunate enough to find an abalone shell. I purchased this one secondhand, and I don't know a lot about them, but I do know that abalone shells are used often for smudging. And what I understand is that it's the accumulation of all of the elements. So you have the shell, which is the water. You have the material, that is the smudge, which is the air. You have the fire that lights it, which is fire. And then you have the smoke, which is air, and also the heoka, because it's revered as something that is absolutely sacred because it rises. It doesn't believe in gravity, or doesn't have gravity doesn't have a large effect on it. So that's one of the reasons why smoke is so sacred, because it is the heoka. It does opposite of what it's supposed to do. It defies the rules. It defies how things work. It defies. So that is one of the reasons why it is sacred. So these are some of my odds and sods. These are some of the sacred tools that I've used over the years to incorporate spirit and to incorporate medicine. And I hope that you have enjoyed some of my discussion about it, and that maybe it helps you think of a little more creative ways to spruce up your altar, to look at different ways of creating altars to represent what you're doing, and how to bring in different objects and how they have different layers for them. And that if there is something in your life that is sacred to you, it can be sacred in any respect and in any way. So thank you for listening. Until the next time we meet. This is Cricket, this is Practical Shamanism, and this has been Odds and Sods.